Bokamper in the right place at the right time.
Joe Rose, touchdown Miami!
Hey guys, welcome back to Out I think we got a lot of people watching Out to Pasture here. Like this show is kind of catching on a little bit, Joe.
We're getting great guests, man.
Yeah,
great
man.
People. Speaking
about guests, look, I got to tell you this before we introduce our guest. Joe and I, we were just slobbering to have this guy on. One of our favorite players. And look, we're trying to get away from. We're trying to do different things. So we delved into the baseball world, and the great Johnny Bench, maybe the greatest baseball player of all time. Look at this guy. One of the 100 greatest players in baseball. I think he's number 16 on that. Considered the best catcher ever in baseball. 14-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, 10-time Gold Glove Award, Hall of Famer. 96.4% of the ballots got him in the Hall of Fame in the first ballot. I mean, what a baseball player, Joe.
A big part of the Big Red Machine with all those great players that Cincinnati Reds had in the 70s. And to be able to talk to the greatest catcher who did it all, as good defensively as he was offensively, as a clutch hitter.
I call him the motor that ran the big machine.
Yeah,
and he was the motor. Let's welcome Johnny Bench. All right, Johnny, welcome to the show, man. I tell you, Joe and I we've been giddy ever since we found out we were going to get us on. We grew up on you, and then I remember being in high school with one of those little transistor radios with the little earplug going on, like sitting there like this while the teacher was talking and listening to the baseball games on radio. But man, thanks for coming on with us. It's absolutely great.
Oh, Zonka, man, that's a pretty good little feather in my cap because I love Larry.
You know, it's funny because we did talk to Larry about all breaking his nose and always injured and playing through it. Johnny, then we see your stuff. Oh, my God, the amount of injuries after catching for so long and tip balls and balls in the ground that come up and going 90-something miles an hour hit you. It's incredible the amount of injuries you had and played through, Johnny. I can't even imagine how you feel now in your 70s.
Well, people say I look good, but I mean, that's just, mobility is a problem like we all have as far as never had any problem with my knees, but I was in a car wreck when I was 18, drunk driver on the wrong side of the 4-lane. And I tried to get out of the way. He hit me right in the door. So I suffered, as it turns out, later on in my life, but I never had problem with my knees, but I had like 17 broken bones, and I've had 7 broken cups. I've had lung surgery. I've had shoulder surgery on both shoulders. I've just, but here at 76, the one thing, Joe and Bo, Kim, it was, I always thought that I wanted to get out and walk away from the game in one piece. And I think you guys had the same feeling, obviously, because you were getting around great. And so I saw a lot of catchers at 50 years old that were hobbling around like they just, they didn't have anything in the future. And I wanted to play on the senior tour. And so, I got out of catching in 1980. That was my last year. And I just, I had the bat back. The doctor said, hey, that injury, the car wreck, you're going to have all kinds of arthritis still to this day. It's what it is. But, I've got a 14-year-old, an 18-year-old, and I got a 34-year-old that's going to give me my first grandson in June. So my life.
Congratulations.
Beautiful.
I'm shocked that as a catcher, that your knees weren't just shredded with that.
Well, you know better. You guys know better than anything. The one thing you didn't want to do was get on the side of the knee. And I never really got hit at home plate. I always pointed my toe right at the runner. So he had to slide up my shin guard and never got anything on the side. Because how many knee surgeries have you guys had?
I've had 3.
Bo's got to be. I've had a couple, but Bo's had.
I've had back. I've had my shoulders,
back,
hands. My
shoulder.
Hands are messed. Yeah, I've had so.
Yeah,
I can't say anything. Yeah. By the way, John, I kind of lost in your, and they don't have it now. Baseball's gotten away from it for catchers. The collisions of guys running full speed, trying to realize they weren't going to be safe and just run right over the top of you. How bad was that when you were playing to embrace and get ready for it? Those impacts.
Joe, I stood in front of the plate. I mean, the last thing you want to do is have some guy that's 6'2", 235 running around third. He can't see home plate. He wants to be on Sports Center, and he's going to take me in the dugout. I didn't have the ball, but as soon as the ball was there, I would take my foot and just step it in front of the plate. because I had him on the ground by now. All runners would basically slide if they saw the play. And so as soon as I got them on the ground, now I just stuck my foot out and just blocked them. And I did put 3 guys in the hospital, so that was some of my best.
Well, that's good for you. Good for you. Good for you. That's
win for the catcher.
That's 3 feathers in your cap that we like to see. I'm telling you that. You know, what I remember about that. I remember we were traveling across country. My dad grew up in Nebraska. We're in California. We're driving around. We jumped into a motel. You know, one of those with the little kidney shaped pool out in the parking lot, and it was the All-Star game. And it was the game. You may have been in the game. It was the game where Pete Rose came and trucked Roy Fosse at the plate, and I think ruined his career after that. So that was a hell of a collision there.
Well, you know, Ray had been out to Pete's house for dinner the night before.
Wow!
And now I think it was Jim Hickman got the base hit, and Pete comes running around third. And if you watch the video, Pete started to head for a slide, which was his signature thing.
Yep.
And when he did, then he saw here's Ray with those shin guards. He's trying to block it. I mean, he didn't have the ball, but that's what you got to do is to try to block it, hold him off, and then tag him. And then Pete came up. And when Pete came up, he got him right underneath the shoulder. And you know how much shoulders are effective for us. And it did. It set him back. He was a tremendous athlete, tremendous. You know, he was just a great guy overall, but he had some. It was just, you know, we were one day to the next. I got ran over at home plate by Gary Matthews in Philadelphia. He hit me with his forearm right there with the ulna bone and just crushed the AC joint. So the acromial and the clavicular connect, and there's a cartilage in between, and it crushed that. And so I had 6 cortisone shots every 3 weeks so I could finish the season. That was in April. So I went the entire year putting 6 cortisone shots every 3 weeks just so I could finish the year. And that's basically, you know, what it meant to be in the game every day.
Yeah.
They weren't going to take you out. Because Sparky used to say, I'd say to Sparky, ever going to get a day off? He'd crook that finger, you know. Let me put it to you this way. If we're behind them, we'll catch you to catch up. If we're tied, I'm going to catch you to get ahead. If we're ahead, I'm going to catch you to stay ahead. I said, I'm not getting a day off, am I? No, you're not getting a day off.
You know, Johnny, I saw the numbers. It's incredible. Like 54 games in a row and 154 of 158 games you caught. It's incredible. The point I know you've said, like, I was gassed and like, hey, do you mind? Can I get a day off here or there? It was incredible. Just talk about going through that where you were catching every friggin' day.
54 days in a row. And I was 20 years old. I was the last one off the bus because I'm just after the accident, only a couple of years. So my back was killing me and everything. But I was the last one off the bus. I couldn't straighten up and everything else. And on about the 54th day or 53rd day, we're playing the Dodgers on a Sunday afternoon. Now, we had played on Saturday night, and we played 15 innings. So we had Johnny Holstaff pitch. Everybody on the staff, they pitched. And so now we're out there the next day, and it's Sunday in Crosley Field. It's 90 degrees. We got wool uniforms on, and we're down 10-0. And it's about the 6th inning. And here comes Jerry Arrigo. Well, I'm thinking, why in the hell am I still in the game here? I mean, this is the 53rd. And Jerry, and I'm tired. I am whipped. And so Jerry had a really good curveball. So I called curveball, and he said, no. I called curveball, and he said, no. Called curveball, and he said, no. I said, well, throw the fastball. I was so tired, I couldn't put my glove up. So I reached out and caught it like that and threw it back to him.
So during that streak, how many double headers did you play in during that streak?
Well, we played just about every other Sunday, so you can imagine.
Yeah.
I did get one of my claims to fame, if you guys ever believe that I played center field, but I played everything but short, second, and pitch. But I was in center field when Hank Aaron got his 3,000th hit. That's wow. My favorite memories. And then I was at home plate when he did his 714th home run in Cincinnati on opening day.
Wow. Hey. So how was he? How was Hank?
He was a wonderful man, just wonderful, you know. Yeah. And you know, we had a rule. Our manager had a no fraternization. I don't know if you guys ever had that, but she wasn't allowed to talk to the other team. And I mean, it was a $50 fine if you would just do it. That just was his rule. And so, you know, you couldn't talk to the hitters or whatever because it looked like so. But Hank would come on, and he would put his bat down right there by his leg, and he would put because he wore the hard helmet over the soft hat. Mm-hmm. And when he put the hard hat on, he says, "How you doing, John?" And it was, I mean, it meant so much to me. I mean, the fraternization thing, we came into St. Louis, and Lou Brock had stolen 32 bases in a row. So we had a pitcher named Jack Fisher. They called him Fat Jack Fisher because he had a belly, and when he put his glove, it just rested on top of his belly. And he looked like he was really slow. And here he comes, and Lou's on first, and Jack pitching, he throws it. I throw down to second. Lou hadn't got to the cutout. He hadn't gotten to the sliding area. He stopped and turned around and looked at me. Now, after the game, I'm in my locker, and I'm taking off my sweats and my sandies, and this shopping cart, which we threw all the sandies and the wet sweat stuff into so they could wash, but this cart pulls up in front of my locker. And I look up, and here's Lou Brock in uniform. And he looks at me and says, "Kid, next time make it look close." Well, I'm right next to the manager's office. You know, how much is this going to cost me? Right. It was, I tell you, it was my first experience like that, and Lou and I remained friends until the day passed.
You know, Johnny, you saw a lot of the great ones, and Bo and I were talking about. We knew we were going to get you on as known as the greatest catcher of all time, and a lot of people. I don't know if there's anybody close, and that's for another day. But I want to ask you. You saw all the great ones that played. Maybe the greatest player. We always talk about the old guys versus these guys today. For you, you've seen the guys playing today as well as the guys before you and during you. Was there one guy or two guys that kind of stand out for you?
Well, of course you had Willie and you had Hank, but to me it was Joe Morgan. I mean, you know, you're talking about a guy who won a Gold Glove at second base, steal a base. He could steal 70, 80 bases however he wanted. He could hit a double. He could get a walk, steal a base, steal another base, hit a home run, and as good a teammate as you would ever ask. But to think of an all-around person that could do everything. And there wasn't, you know, batting second, he's not going to drive in a million runs. But if you had somebody on base, he was the guy. If you needed to walk, he got a walk. If you needed a double, he got a double. I mean, it was just that. And the most feared hitter of all was right out there in San Francisco, Willie McCovey. You know, they're just guys that you don't think you have a pitch to get a guy out. I mean, that's when you do it. But, you know, just name it. Of course, I can't go without saying Mickey Mantle because he was from Oklahoma. He was my idol, and to think what he had to go through in his life with all the injuries. But, yeah, those were my guys. But, golly, I mean, you talk about blessed to see some of these guys that came to the plate every day and to walk into an all-star game. You know, in Detroit in 71, I think we had like 33 or 38 players on the field were destined for the Hall of Fame. And you just
So when you first got into baseball, and particularly in the big leagues, did you walk in the locker room? Because we talked to Stan Van Gundy a week ago, and he was talking about like we came in, you know, and like you walk in that locker room, you go, man, I think I'm a fraud. I don't think I can play on this team. Did you kind of walk in with a little bit starry-eyed and going, wow, I don't know if I've got the goods to be on this team and make a living in it?
I was such a cocky kid. I was going to be the best. I was going to do this. I was talking 18 years old. You know, we were going to conquer the world and everything else. And then I had spring training, had some success. Manager gave you that old song and dance. He said, at 18, you could go to the big leagues right now, but you wouldn't be starting right now. I'm going to put you in a small pond. I'm going to make it. So when I got to Cincinnati, I was 19 years old, and I came from Buffalo. And after 3 days, I asked the manager if I could bat fourth. I mean, I just had so much. I call it inner conceit. I call it.
There you go.
You guys had it. I mean, you had the ability under a certain situation. You knew you could do the job. And that's what I want everybody to achieve and attain. When you walk to the plate, you're the one in charge. When there's a runner on base, you're the one in charge. I was just so cocky and everything else when I do it. And then, of course, you learn pretty quick when you get beat down and all the stuff that goes on. But I never had one doubt that I didn't belong. I had just walked into spring training. I walked into the clubhouse. They put me behind the plate, 19 years old. And here I am worrying about my son driving to college an hour away.
That's a whole different, that topic, right? That father stuff doesn't matter how great you are. I got you. Hey, so you played for the Big Red Machine, and you guys had so many great players on those teams, not to mention the Hall of Famers, and we've had a chance to be around Tony Prez down here and Pete Rose at times when he was here. Just all the great players. Did you guys always get along, or were there times when you have so many great players? How was it in that great run of almost 10 years?
You know, I got to tell you, Joe, you couldn't have had a better relationship with anybody. I mean, we had Pete, Joe, and myself. We all respected each other. We really liked each other. There was no animosity at any time. And it was interesting that Ted Marchibroda was on a plane with me one time, and he asked me, why are we successful? And I said, well, we have white leadership, black leadership, and Latin leadership. You know, and in saying that, if anybody had a question on any side, they could go to Tony or they could go to Joe, and we could all do it. And we all gave our great respect to Sparky Anderson, because Sparky was 3 or 4 innings ahead of the other manager. He knew what they were going to do before they did it. No, it was the best working environment. I'm sure you played with egos at times, guys that were hard to do, and you hear about teams like the Oakland A's, or maybe the Dodgers had 4 or 5 different groups that hung together. You know, but when you walk across those white lines, man, there was nothing else to do but win.
Yeah, well, we were lucky. We played for Don Shula. It was his way, and we all got along, and it actually, most of our guys are really close to your point. Pete Rose, always an interesting topic for everybody. Can you stay close to a guy like Pete Rose?
Joe, why? I mean, why is it still coming up?
What's that?
Why does it still come up 34 years later?
Oh, I don't know. I don't. Are you still around? Do you get to see some of the guys still, Johnny?
We've had a couple of reunions. We had the All-Star. We had the Hall of Fame induction in Cincinnati with the Reds Hall of Fame. But, you know, I learned in the 8th grade from my teacher, Mrs. Frances Tate. She had one thing: you make your own bed, you got to sleep in it. And so, you know, nobody writes the rules except, you know, the rules. And you know the rules.
Right.
I mean, you know, you knew what would happen if you did certain things and all that stuff. You know, I was involved in trying to 3 times to try to get him back on the ballot and stuff, and it just hadn't worked out. And
it's a shame. It really is a shame. It
is.
Hey, you mentioned Larry, and we talked to Larry a couple years, and we talked to him about going back to the Hall of Fame and seeing the guys that he played with in his era. And when you go back there and you reminisce with the guys, there's less and less every year. And there's more of the young guys coming up that don't really relate to you because they think they're the greatest thing that ever hit the ground. And so what is your experience in those type of settings?
Well, the bank account, I don't know that their jets fit on the runway. They're the closest runway.
Bingo.
20 minutes away, and their jets are too big to land on this. They won't lengthen the runway, so it's a little bit out of the way. When I lived in Palm Springs, it was 12 hours door to door. You know, living in Florida, it's still 9 hours because you got a whole thing. You got to go to change planes. You got to fly to Albany, an hour and a half to Cooperstown. And, you know, it's, and like you said, you know, it's a status thing now. It's not what you mean. It's, you know, it's not what you're worth. It's what you're worth. And some of these guys just have, you know, so much money to give up 4 days, and it's inconvenient. But I will say we've got a lot of guys that have been coming back. And like you said, there's nothing like walking in the lobby like I did the first time. My dad, we flew up from Cincinnati, and so we got out of the car and the limo at the hotel. I said, I'm going to change, because my dad wanted to be a catcher. He served 2 hitches in the war. He wanted to play in the major leagues. He served 8 years. We get out of the car. I'm going to go unpack. I go unpack. I walk out of my room. I'm walking down the hall. Here's Enos Country Slaughter. Hey, I just met your dad. I get to the elevator. Pee Wee Reese comes out of the elevator and says, hey, I just met your dad. I get down to the lobby, and Ted Williams is standing there, and he said, hey, I just met your dad. He's got Roy Campbell in a headlock in the wheelchair talking about catching. And so when I had my induction speech, I said, I introduced the family, and then to save my dad, and I said, I would introduce my dad, but I'm sure most of you have met him by now. You know how important those family are. The dad that lived every kick, every pass, every punt, every play, every throw. But there were times when we had a pitcher named Don Gullett, God rest his soul, he just passed away, and his dad he'd have the White Lightning. You know, he was down there in Kentucky. So I could always tell when Don's dad came to the game because you could hear my dad,
"Hey, Johnny!" Hey, Johnny, it's funny to hear you. You talked about the boys earlier. They got to keep you young, huh? Having the young guys around and their world, and no matter what age you are, just staying active.
3.5. I had them for 3.5 years by myself, and I just took the youngest one because the oldest one's graduating. And the 18-year-old, of course, is graduating, and he usually would drive to school. Now I'm taking the young one again. So I'm up at 5:50. We get the breakfast for him. We get him out the door. We get him dressed. We do the stuff. We got to pick him up at 3 o'clock. And I'm telling you, there is nothing greater. And I've made so many good friends up here in the Palm Beach Gardens and Jupiter area that we have a breakfast. So I drop them off at school. We go to breakfast. But we just had a championship soccer game for the rec league, and they won that. And it's like, and tennis, and going to the games and going to practice. Oh, I am just, for 76 years old, I'm still enjoying every bit of it.
That's great. Hey, speaking of the younger generation, there, the game's changed a lot since you played. You watch games now, and you look at how the games are played, and is there something there that drives you nuts whenever you look at a game now and you watch what's going on and the way they play and the way they carry themselves?
I think it's our attitude more than anything, Bo. I think it's the fact that we have so many 24-hour sports shows. We have talk shows, and a lot of these talk shows are assassins. They assassinate the players. They do it. Then they show the worst 10 highlights and the best 10, and then and you see these guys, and so now you're inundated, and now they got gambling put in. That's the one thing that has changed the game in so many ways. But the player himself, when I went in, in '89. Here's Robin Roberts and Duke Snyder and all that. And they all had one thing, it doesn't matter what era. Because if you played in the 50s, you could have played in the 70s. If you could play in the 70s, you could play in the 2000s. And right now, the only thing that really bothers me is the catchers trying to frame their pitch. They call this framing stuff and jerking the glove and doing stuff. But I love the clock. I love the fact I follow it every day. We have a College Catcher of the Year award every year in Cincinnati. And I love to follow the box scores to see what all the catchers that have made it all the way up. Like, Adley Rutschman's was one of them. And, of course, he's a star now. And we've had Suzuki that's still playing. We've had, it's just been like 14 or 15 guys. So I don't know that they're faster, they're stronger, they're better diets. We weren't able to lift weights. We didn't have any kind of workouts or anything else that did it. But the conditioning, I think I'm jealous of, that they could have conditioned. And of course, the three of us would have been on the disabled list every other game. If they had that MRI in the clubhouse, we'd have been going in there and said, no, Joe, you got a little hairline. Hell with it, tape it up. Pull a groin muscle or a hamstring, and you took Abilene cream and capsulin. Yep. You mixed it together to the heat that you could have really stand. You rubbed it on and you put an ace bandage around it. Now, it didn't affect my speed at all. It wouldn't have mattered if I could have done one leg. They timed me with a calendar. So I just sort of went through this whole thing. And after 3 or 4 days, you were healed. Now they're disabling for 3 weeks. I think that is the one thing that we're just a little too cautious with our athletes.
Yeah, I remember rubbing horse liniment on, trying anything you could. Anything. We would go to the vet. We would go to the where the
DMSO.
Where they sell stuff for the vets and get stuff. Hey, what do you got that can DSMO or all these different things? We tried all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah. They did that. You could see, and those pitchers, they'd be pulling their jersey back and just putting that hot stuff on their shoulder every inning.
Right.
Now, Jim Maloney threw 187 pitches and a 10 inning no-hitter he threw against the Cubs. He walked 9 and hit 1, but he threw the no-hitter and 187 pitches. And he was out there 4 days later. So what can we expect? I guess it's a little coddling, but you got a big investment.
Johnny, I got to say this. A couple of years ago, the Dolphins are playing Cincinnati, and Nat Moore and Dan Marino, a couple of us, I go, hey, we got to go down to the Cincinnati baseball park and see. I heard about the statues. I got to tell you, that was the greatest thing to see you guys all in the front. How cool is that, going back, especially with your family, maybe the first time and seeing that whole thing, John?
It was one of my great moments, and they came to me and said we were going to put a statue of you, and I said, well, I'm not going to be there unless you put everybody else, the other three up. And that was the one thing that I said, that's the way it is. I said, that's got to be it. So when I had the statue presentation, and I'm sitting there, Joe's there, Morgan, and I said, this is one of the greatest moments that I could ever remember. And he said, man, are you crazy? After it was over, you crazy? What are you doing? What are you talking about? And after they put his statue up, he walked straight to me and he said, I know what you mean. You're there forever. I mean, this is a way to make it all happen. And I have one in Oklahoma City, and Sparky was there, and he says, and during his speech, he said, I want to thank you all for giving the pigeons a place to roost. Thank you. I mean, it's
Yeah, right.
I always had a little different twist than everybody else was thinking about, right?
Yeah. So cool.
Hey, you look now, and I remember pitchers back in the day. If they didn't throw 9 innings, they were embarrassed. If you took them out earlier, and I've been talking to some of the younger kids, some of my kids around that around me, they play baseball, and I go, well, back in the day, guys used to play pitch complete games. Speaking about complete games, Bob Gibson, his numbers are just ridiculous. Yep. When he had the game with Juan Marichal where it went 16 innings, it was a 1-0 game or something, and both of them pitched a complete game.
Yeah, I mean, Gaylord Perry was running out to the mound in the 15th inning. We played 20 scoreless innings. He was running out in Crosby Field, which was a heat box. It was a sauna. And, but he was running out there and did, of course, and then there's Robin Roberts, who had 28 complete games one year.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
But now, you got such a big investment. Now you got trainers. I mean, the trainers are the first guys to speak now in the meeting. This guy can do this. This guy can do that. This guy can't do this. And so the manager and the owner says that's the way it'll be. And he can't play for another 2 weeks, and we're going to rehab him. And rehab him. I mean, I never touched my toes in my life. I wouldn't have got a tryout if it had been today. I mean, that combine. How about you two guys at the combine?
It would be ugly right now compared to watching these guys, these workouts. No, it would be. Go home and find a semi-pro league somewhere.
Joe, you're what, 6'3"? You played around 225, 230.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wide receiver size.
Yeah,
now.
and you run the 100, and or you run that 40.
Yeah, like 4.7, which, by the way, slow on a defensive lineman, right?
Oh no, let's just put him on. Send him back to the CFL or where he can do.
That's right. Another league.
So may I ask you, who's the biggest jag-off you ever played against?
Interesting. Well, not to mention names because I won't leave the family with that reminder of what they were. We didn't have any. I mean, Sparky would call us into Pete, Joe, Tony, myself. He'd call us all 4 in. He'd call us in one at a time and say, "What if we can trade for Joe Rose? What do you think?" Yeah, that'd be great. Because we were the best judge of character and people and whether they fit into the team. Now, at that time, we may have needed a guy to back up somebody, or we may have needed a pitcher or something. What about this guy? No. And basically, that's all we ever heard at the end of it was no. If we said we didn't like somebody, they didn't fit into our ball club.
Yeah.
There was twice that they traded for guys that we had no idea what was happening. And they were there about 3 weeks. They're doing the bubble gum thing, the light the fire on the heel and shoe. And it was like, no, we gave that up. It's just not the way you play.
I wasn't talking about guys on your team. I'm talking about the guys you played
against.
I
am too. We didn't have any jagoffs, but there were a few out there, but I never harmed their name.
Yeah. Inside and tight, Johnny. Anybody you had to get even with, just point it inside, huh? Inside and get the guy off the plate, and here we go.
Yeah. We had 7 plays one game. 7. We hit 7. And if you had a home run, the guy ahead of you had a home run, you were going down.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
One of the great stories of all time for me was a guy named Bill Terry. Now, Bill Terry, if you look it up, I think he had batted .412. And he was, led the league, of course, and everything else, but he became a manager. And back in those days, they brought these guys up, young kids up at the end of the season. Well, they probably gave him $50, $100 or whatever to play and all that. And so Bill told me the story. He said, I went out and told the kid from the bullpen. He brought him in from the bullpen. He said, you either hit this guy or it's $50. Well, $50 back in 1920, 30
money
was a hell of a lot of money. So the kid winds up and he throws it. The hat comes off. The guy goes down. The ball goes between his helmet and his head. He missed him. They threw the ball back to the pitcher. And while the guy was getting out of up from the batter's box, he was still down on the ground. He got up. The kid wind up and hit him. So hit him on his I can't afford $50. So yeah, there were guys that were marked. There were guys that were marked. And it was just
That's incredible to think. A guy's really hot and got a hot bat, and you know it's coming. You hit a couple of bombs, and you're like, I know it's coming. I'm getting hit. Like, it's part of the game.
If you look at Willie Mays' history and his records, Don Drysdale averaged hitting him almost once a game.
Wow. You
don't like him, you hit him.
That's great. So I heard the story. I got to go back to the story again. Bob Gibson, where I think it was his last game he played, and hit through to somebody. Guy hit a home run off him in the last game he played, and then about 15 or 20 years ago, he's playing an all-star game, and that guy comes in an old-timer game, and the guy comes to the plate, and the first thing he did was drilled him right in the ribs. The first pitch right in the ribs.
He never got to face him again in that game, so he had to get even one way or the other. But
right. That's it.
Bob talked about the fact that he always had that, he looked in like this going, and well, he couldn't, it was dark in the park, and he either lost his contacts or whatever, and he couldn't see. So he started squinting in at the hitter, at the catcher to see the sign. And the next day the guy said, man, why are you mad at me for? What did I do? And he realized, because now he had the guy nervous, that he started squinting every time he looked in.
It worked. He had that reputation of being a tough son of a gun, boy.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was Stan Williams. Stan Williams was probably the meanest. He was our pitching coach, but he pitched for the Dodgers, pitched for them, and he just hit people. I mean, he was 6'4", 230, just, nobody, wasn't scared of anything, nothing you could bother him. He didn't care what you did. He was going to drill you, and he was going to drill you good. And Willie Mays hated it. I mean, he was just totally, and smart, wisely so, he was scared to death of Stan, as it should be. Well, Stan threw him an outside pitch one day, and Willie was bailing out like this and swung his bat, hit off the end of his bat, and went over the first baseman, just barely over the line. Hell, didn't even get hardly to the outfield. And so he got a base hit. Well, the manager comes out to take Stan out of the game. And so the dugouts, or the clubhouse in San Francisco, his old Candlestick, was down the right field line. So Stan didn't even bother to go to the dugout. He walked straight towards the dugout, and he walked past first, and he said, you'll never get another hit off me because I'll kill you the next time you're out. Really never faced him again in his career. Now that's
crazy.
Hey, we're both, our show's about aging. We say we don't want any guests that are under 50 years old, and so that gets to the young people. So we played a good time in football, and now the younger people. So I had a little bit part in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and that's what the kids know. Hey, I was at a golf tournament, just hitting some wedge shots, and I hear the guy, hey, that's Kim Bokamper. That's Kim Bokamper. Oh, you guys remember me? Yeah. So I got done hitting the balls, and they say, hey, can we get an autograph? I said, yeah. He goes, man, we loved you in Ace Ventura. So now let me put it into your frame. Now the younger guys that talk to you about baseball, they remember you in the baseball bunch. Is that where you get
no question? I mean,
from the youngsters
all across the country. Even though I was on Married with Children, I was on the Partridge Family, I was on 4 or 5 other shows, but yeah, the baseball bunch. If we'd have had a really good time, that they would have shown that. We won 4 Emmys on that, but it was just such a great thing for kids, and we looked at bringing it back, but with the digital stuff, it just wouldn't, and you couldn't get players anyway. You couldn't get enough to do the game and all this stuff, but It was, we are the baseball bunch. We're going to go far.
You got some singing
yeah,
talent.
You're pretty good there,
You got some
Johnny.
singing talent too there.
Hey, Johnny, thank you, man. This has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, really appreciate it.
No,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time, man. I know it's you're
Great
busy
stories.
but yeah, we're
think
just
it's
great
more
fans
lies.
of yours.
I'll think of some more lies in 5 years. Call me back, will you?
There you go.
Right.
Appreciate
We're going
it.
to come up and see you one time. We're going to sneak up an hour up the road.
I know it. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. And good luck to you.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's pretty good, man. I don't know about you.
Those
but
stories, are you kidding me?
We could have sat here for 2 hours and just listened to him telling stories about the other players that we like to watch. It was right in our wheelhouse, man.
Some of the great players. And by the way, if he didn't play against them, he saw him play, and he's obviously a big fan of watching.
Yeah, I mean,
all
you're
the
talking
guys
about
today.
Warren Spahn and going back Pee Wee Reese and those kind of guys. What a storyteller he was. Hey, great to have him on. But hey, look, if you want to see more of this, if you like what you're doing, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast or streaming platform, and stay with us. Hey, like we say, come on, join us on Out to Pasture.